Today I want to talk about the flowers of 2017, many of which I started from seed. Now, my purple basil hedgerow is the #1 choice for bees in my garden, and I'm so lucky that because it doesn't freeze here, it blooms all year, so it's a constant source of energy for bees. But in addition to my purple basil, I want to provide a variety of flowers, a variety of nectars for my bees, butterflies, and birds, hummingbirds. So here are my flowers of summer 2017. Let me backtrack for a minute. By Valentine's Day, I had seeded all my flowers. Several of the seeds were given to me, and a few had already sprouted. 3 weeks later, I was potting up the 4 o'clocks and Roselle. I had direct seeded Johnny Jump Ups and Linaria in their forever homes, and they were in full bloom. In April, I had my major potting up, which included Snapdragon, German Chamomile, Blue Victoria Salvia, and ALYSSUM. These petunias were in bloom since 2016. And one of the most exquisite flowers in my garden, my pineapple guava trees, were absolutely loaded with blooms. Meanwhile, Johnny Jump Ups were spilling out of their container. My California poppies looked wonderful in April. Tiny cactus blooms are treasured as much as big showy flowers in my garden. And I make tea from the fragrant chamomile flowers. Self-seeding nasturtium and borage were taking over the garden by May. Snapdragon was putting on a show. This native milkweed isn't as favored by monarchs as tropical, but I love the subtle color. All year long I plant cilantro, which attracts syrphid fly. Marigolds are supposed to repel pests. This idyllic scene felt like an English garden with no space between flowers. A neighbor gave me a small Mexican marigold 3 years ago, which produces copious, cheerful blooms for months. Bees love lavender. This was my old plant that was covered in mildew and recently replaced. In June, my smaller parkway was taking shape. Cosmos was a late addition, but it caught up to the salvia. The butterfly bush I bought from the nursery. The biggest surprise and delight was the bee balm, grown from seed. Pale pink snapdragons were taking off. Fennel is a reliable perennial here, and it was huge. In July, the parkway was nearly full with flowers and winter squash. All of the flower seed I bought, except for Cosmos, came from botanical interests. If you order seeds from the link above, as an affiliate marketer, I will receive a small commission and you can help support this channel. I hit it out of the park growing bee balm for the first time. Between the fuchsia cosmos, the lavender bee balm, and deep purple of the princess flower, purple reigned supreme on the parkway. I'll be covering the transformation of this garden block in a separate video. My goal, since visiting Epic Yard Farm in Phoenix, is to multi-species plant, which confuses pests, and it's also a feast for the eye. And visiting England this summer, I fell in love with the variety of flowers and returned with a desire to make a year-round bee garden right here. I'm really trying to mix it up and plan to do a series of videos how I developed each garden block. This is my first time growing passion fruit, and I ordered 2 vines after my visit to Phoenix. Monarchs are frequent visitors to my garden, and this day they were making hay while the sun shined, so to speak. Okra loves heat. I seeded it 3 times and only got 1 plant. praying mantis are welcome in the garden. They are ferocious hunters and keep the pest population down. Watch for their egg sacs attached around the garden. My gorgeous violet salvia was also a victim of mildew. I purchased this penstemon plant in September because I was unsuccessful starting it from seed, and I was determined to have that red in my garden. Another perennial native I have been growing for 4 years is California fuchsia, or Zauschneria. One of the more successful flowers that I've grown is Snapdragon. I was first sent Snapdragon seeds by my friend Cher at Cher Garden in Pittsburgh, and she also sent me calendula and petunia and so many others, all of which I've grown. Unfortunately, calendula gets covered in mildew over the season, and I finally had to pull it all out. It was just a mess. And my California poppies, same thing, covered in mildew. I have such a problem with mildew here. And my neighbor, my sweet little neighbor, Eddie, gave me a dahlia. Now, I've never grown dahlia, even though Mr. Gerber, the older gentleman that lived next door, was a dahlia maestro. And every summer he pulled out his plants and they lined on stadium bleachers all across in front of his property. But I'd never tried to grow dahlia or any flower that comes from a bulb. But my neighbor Eddie gave me this dahlia, and I thought, hey, he's giving me a dahlia, I'll give it a try. And it was stunning. It was the most incredible, huge, 5 foot tall. I was just amazed. Unfortunately, it got covered in mildew. So I started selectively taking off leaves. When it seemed like it was about down to its last flower, I took the whole thing out. But I mean, it was covered in mildew. And you can't start spraying flowers with neem. So I just have to focus on flowers that don't get mildew. Snapdragon doesn't get mildew. I'm so lucky. I have white and purple and pink. The petunias don't get mildew. And I also have white ALYSSUM. They've done really well. Of course, I got that from Cher also. Cosmos is still going strong. The amazing fuchsia cosmos. You know, now things are winding down, so I've got to find ways to feed the bees and the hummingbirds through the winter. I have pitcher sage, that's a California native, and that blooms on and off all year, and the hummingbirds love that because it has the deep bells. And I also have aloe that blooms once or twice a year, and they love that. I have geraniums that bloom all year. You know, I don't ever see bees or butterflies on the geraniums. It's unfortunate. 4 o'clocks. Also got the seeds from Cher. Those are reseeding and coming up all over. But as you'll hear in another video, they got spider mites like crazy. So it's challenging, but that's part of the fun, is figuring things out in the garden, investigating, observation. It's all so worth it. See you next time.